Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second episode of the CVRcade Talk Show. I think I speak from all three of us when we say we did not expect the reception from the entire community to be so good as it was. I mean, I've had so many people reach out to us and say, "How do I get on the podcast? It's amazing. You should talk about this. You should interview this person." Well, don't worry, we're gonna get to all that. But today is the second episode. Joining me as always is Beth and Victor. How are you two doing today?
Good.
Great. How are you?
Yeah.
I'm good, thank you for asking. Today, we're going to cover a topic we didn't quite get to cover last week, because last week was very racing focused, but this week, we're taking a closer look at Beth's Rise and Rip rides, and we're looking closer at the track builder, thanks to the help of Ben Chuilon. But first up, Beth, Rise and Rip. It's an initiative you've been doing on CV Arcade for the last month or so. What is it, and how can people get involved?
Yeah, well, we have been seeing with the World Cup racing a really intense focus of racing on the platform, and more people were coming onto the platform and maybe saying, "Wait, this racing isn't for me," and then getting a little bit of afraid maybe to put their toe in the water. So creating a Rise and Rip was just the idea of like, let's just ride the platform, let's make it a social ride, let's do it at a recovery level, and there are a lot of newbies coming on asking questions because the UI is so rich, right? And the first time you log in, you're like, what do I do? And where do I go? And so it can be a little overwhelming. So I just wanted to kind of peel it back and have a friendly, comfortable place where people could ask questions about, hey, how do I change this in my profile? Or how do I do this? Or so we answer questions about how to do things in the game from the UI standpoint, but we also practice how to use power-ups because, we take for granted because we race that we know how to activate a power-up, but we need to first get people to know how to sign into an event. So it starts from the very beginning and it's evolved over time. We have a lot of experienced riders that come in. And so it's nice to have this mix of newbies and experienced riders that are sharing information and knowledge and riding their bikes.
And we've only really scratched the surface as well with what the game can do. There's some widgets on the UI that I have never opened. Like they're in there, I don't really know what they do. Sometimes they say coming soon, sometimes they open up, I'm like, wow, what's this? And it's awesome. But Vic, I think you're one of the people that have probably played around with the UI the most. If you remember the overview video we made, what do you think about this? Like trying to onboard people, explain to them, because you've gone through this exact same progress.
Yeah, like for me, these rides are the best because once you join like CV Arcade for the first time, as Beth said, it's like a rich UI. Like it's very overwhelming because there's so many features, and honestly, I fiddle around with it and not even I know all of the features. Like there's just so many things, but I feel like these rides are very good for people to get like you need to get the basics down first, because the way we do it now for a lot of people is like you join the platform, you ride alone, and then it's a race, which is quite overwhelming. But the Rise and Rip rides were really good, and like I almost wish they were there at my time because like I struggled, but it takes some time. But I really enjoy it. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
good.
shame on you, Beth. Like you sketch,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think one Rise and Rip. I think it's the Friday one. Starts like was it 5 hours after Zone T finishes, and I'm like,
I
Oh,
know.
God.
I like to take
I
part.
know.
I also commend you because you commentate that, and then you've got to get up and do the ride. So thank you. But
That's it.
I mean, group rides on Cade is something that's not yet really been explored. As Victor said, you get on, bam, you're racing, and you're getting physically equalized. It's quite scary. But group rides are some of the most successful rides on virtual platforms. I mean, getting people on, having the social aspects, and we don't even need categories like physical equalization. Beth, you've seen it because you've been leading these group rides. You've had people
Yes.
on. What's it like to have riders come in for the first time and you walk them through exactly what is CV Arcade all about?
Well, it's so much fun because they come with, open eyes, and we have people who have come and they ride thousands and thousands of miles outside, and then we have people who have come onto the platform that, I have a friend who's a skier who said, "Oh, I want to stay in shape this winter," and she's new to cycling, she's new to indoor cycling, and you have these worlds converging, and I mean, the experience level doesn't get more, diverse to that. A newbie to the sport, a newbie to the game, and and just getting in there and feeling comfortable and having this welcoming environment. And with the group rides, we practice what you might see in a race. So sometimes people will say, what happened? I watched the stream and I had no idea what that was. And I'm like, well, hey, that's the power up that does this. And so we talk a little bit about that and we practice them. And what's really cool is we've been working on pace lining, and not just like single file pace line where someone pulls over to the left and the person pulls through. We have been practicing like 2x2 and how that works. So what is happening is that through these group rides, people are learning a little bit about how cycling works outside, because sometimes people who ride solo, time trialists, they don't even know how a group ride can operate. So we practice drafting and we practice lane position. And we even do things like, okay, let's fire that inertia, chill for 10 seconds, let's blast up the hill and then fire lazy boy and continue that power over the top. So we're working on those tactics as well, but completely like, who cares if you crash? Use that comeback kid. We'll see you. But the equalization means that we're all doing it together and we're not needing to adjust our own effort to, feel like we have to slow down for someone or that we're going too hard. So it's really, really so much fun.
And the cool thing is you've got the audio widget, so you don't need to go on Discord. You don't need to get a massive Facebook, like FaceTime conversation going. Get in the same audio widget. You talk, you chat. But I'm saying I have horrible memories of paceline practicing. I remember in the early days with the wind on, and Frank was trying to teach me how to paceline, because I'm not a cyclist. I am as far away from a cyclist. I understand how to race these virtual platforms, but I'm not a cyclist. So I've never had to do any pacelining. And I remember a story where Frank goes, "Stay on the white line," and I'm like, I want to move over. He's like, "No, stay." At the time, I did not understand what he was trying to tell me, that the wind will come around. If you stay in the middle and you keep it easier, it's easier for everybody. But what I was doing was making sure it was easier for me. If I could find the draft, I was staying in the draft. But the entire paceline was just left obliterated. And that's, I think the paceline strategy is so good, Beth. Vik, we're seeing, because we do a lot of advertising testing, we're seeing a lot of people react to this. And I mean, group rides should be a really good way to get those people on, because you've seen it firsthand, these people going, "What's this?"
Yeah, exactly. No, I firmly believe group rides it's the core of CVRcade that we need, because right now it's just pure racing. But for all these people that we advertise to, most of them most likely are not proper racers. They just want to ride. And I feel it's a very, very good and nice experience to just join. You don't have to go all out instantly, because physical equalization means every race is going to be hard because it's equalized. So I think it's having these easy rides, just get into the game and then start with something else. So I really think if we can get more group rides and more chill rides, these people will come and they will stay, which should be really cool.
There's a few riders in the community that I'd really like their take on this, because Luis Sobranis is amazing at racing now. When he first came in, he struggled a tiny bit. Daniel LeBlanc is getting really good. He struggled. Paula, your friend Beth, she's racing now. She's rocking at the top. Niels Heldens. There's so many success stories out there that I think are confined to their bubbles. They don't really get shared outside of the teams, because it's not this platform is so rich, as Beth would say. It has so many layers, and you need to go through the progression of being horrible at the game in order to being good at the game. And there are some good stories in that progression level that I feel would be great to have shared. But Beth, before we move on to the track discussion, which I think many are here to hear about, how can people join the Rise and Ribs, and where can they find more information?
Well, the ones that I lead are on Mondays and Fridays. I always will post in the CVRcade Riders group. And I think it's also important to note that anyone else can create their own events. I've just kind of taken this upon myself and have really enjoyed it and trying to help people along. But if your team wants to do one, if you want to create your own event, if you want to, do a practice event, it's really easy to create your own events. And hopefully we'll be having more of these onboarding rides. But check CVRcade Riders, and it's a lot of fun. And Vik, just saying that that progression that happens, it gives people confidence to hop into the racing, and that's been it's been really cool to see those things. So we should surface those stories, and maybe we should actually do a group ride during one of the races in between the World Cup seasons.
I can't wait to see that, just because that would turn into a race with how the riders on the platform.
I know.
They would go, what's this, 300 equalized? No, I want 600 now.
I'll just nudge it up a tiny bit up that hill.
Which is
I
like
fear you're right.
any group ride ever, Beth. There's a signpost first up there, gets to not pay for the coffee. There's always that. Well, yeah, you don't quite get that anywhere else. So it's good to have those. Go have a look on the CVRcade Riders Forum. Highly recommend it. I hear great things from Homer, from Kayla, for the other riders that participate in Beth's great classes. Now, for what the majority you came here to hear about, Ben Chuilon is releasing a new track to the CVRcade world. It's called Metropolis. I had to sit down with Ben Chuilon earlier today to talk through his flow. How does he come up with the ideas, and how does he actually navigate through the track builder? So without further ado, here's Ben Chuilon. With me today, I've got CVRcade's community's best track creator, if I do say so myself, Ben Chuilon. Ben, thank you for taking the time to coming on to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
No, well, you created the tracks that have been raced the most, so it's only right that the first ever guest here on the podcast is probably the community member that's contributed most to the racing. You've made Dust Bowl Crit, you made Summit Islands, which many probably still hate you for that course, honestly, so not sure whether that's something to be proud of or not. And now you have a new track coming out. Before we showcase this new track, Ben, what's your workflow like? Because I think many have dabbled with a track creation tool. They've sat there and they've gone, this is like playing with Lego again. I don't know where to start.
Well, I think it all starts with an idea of what would be a fun circuit to race on or to ride on. So it's the track, the profile, and the corners, and that's what comes up first, really, in sort of idea that I might get. And then I think of that, and then I try and create the track, and then after that I focus a bit more on what it might look like in terms of the decorations.
Do you have like a background in like structural engineering, or is there something that speaks to you in the track builder more than to others?
Possibly. I'm a mechanical engineer. So, I like all things technical. I love to on my long rides, I'm always thinking about the dynamics of cycling and, what might be quicker than something else and those sorts of things, and aerodynamics and all these things. So I'm quite technical in that sense, and perhaps I think that appeals to me, problem solving and creating new things, engineering new things. So I think that might be a part of it.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And it comes through in your work as well, because Dust Bowl Crit is just a masterpiece. Like, talk me through from a thought in your head to being a track that is probably the most influential track that's being raced. Like, it's always the end of an Omnium. It's always the decider. Talk me through how that specific course came to be.
Well, that specific course is probably the one I've put the most amount of thought in terms of the track itself. Because CVRcade has crashing, which no other platform has, I thought this brings the sort of crit to life, where you have to slow down and then re-accelerate after every bend. So I thought if there ever was a chance to make a crit course, it would be on CVRcade. So that was the idea. I started off with wanting to make a crit course with tight corners that you had to slow down for, and then hopefully punch out of with some big efforts. So that was the aim. And then when I started doing the track, what I tried to do was I tried to make every corner a different bend radius. So every corner is different. They've all got different speeds that you need to memorize or jot down somewhere. And so that was the idea, really. And in order to have the track cross over itself, you've got to have sort of bridges. I didn't want the track to intersect itself fully, so I put in some bridges, and I thought just a couple of little punchy climbs, it'll add to the extra efforts that you have to do on top of trying to sprint out of every corner. So that's how it began, and then it just evolved from there with a few tweaks here and there, and once I was satisfied, once I was happy with the circuit itself, I began the long process of adding all the decorations. But that's another aspect I quite enjoy of making the tracks.
Talk to me about the decorations, because the track that we're about to show here in the talk show, it's got quite a few. It's got a few decoration. What's that process like?
Well, I mean, I don't know. For me, I've said it before. I'm not that keen on having the road floating around in space. So for me, it's to try and make the track look sort of real in terms of the sort of physics, so that things are supported, things aren't just floating in midair. So for me, it starts trying to get bits of the track to match the floor, to either have something that sort of supports the road or makes it look like the road is on the ground. And then beyond that, I try to decorate it and have it such that different parts of the track have a different sort of feel to them. On Dust Bowl Crit, I sort of tried to have a sort of canyon-like alley that people tend to refer to as Boulder Alley now. Tried to have that as a canyon-like thing, and then similarly like a row of trees that were sort of planted either side. Various things like that. I think one of the things it's always nice to have more and more objects to put into the tracks to decorate them. But actually, one thing I quite like is trying to find new ways of using the objects that are there. So I'm like putting things upside down, or just like submerging them underneath the ground and only showing a small portion of the object to turn it into something new, changing the sizes, changing the positions. So I quite enjoy being creative with the sort of almost limited resources that you have for each theme.
I think that's also the nice charm about the track builder, because I don't think that people realize, Ben, that some of the boulders you put in there are probably tiny rocks that you've scaled up to like 1,000. Then you've turned the axis in a way or which that it looks like something that it was never meant to be in the beginning. And that's where the magic of the track builder comes in. But what's it like to have people talk about your creation? The Writers Forum, people, they come on, they talk about crashing, and you're the one who's made this. You spend the hours, and now people are writing it, they're loving it, and then sometimes there's that Summit Islands, like, some hate it.
Yeah, well, I think, better than the pleasure of creating the tracks is definitely the reception that they get. And when people praise the track, say they love it, or it's their favorite track, or even if they say they hate it, it's a great feeling, and it's nice to give something to the CVR community, and to just share it with everyone else. It's another aspect of it. It's fun.
And now this new track that's being added, Ben. Do you have the name for it yet?
I've called it Metropolis.
I like that name.
And so basically, it uses a sci-fi theme, which has got a lot of buildings, all futuristic, but it has a lot of buildings in it. So I was trying to turn it into a sort of cityscape, if you like, which is why it's called Metropolis.
And it seems to be about 6 kilometers long?
It is, yeah. It's definitely my longest track. I sort of just went away and added all the bits of track and did the whole thing, everything I wanted to add to it, and then realized that I'd given myself a massive task of decorating 6 kilometers of track. So it's easily the one that's taken the longest to put together. But again, so this one was, in terms of the circuit itself, I wanted to have a sort of mix of everything. I didn't want it to be too technical, so Dust Bowl Crit was very technical, and Summit Islands to a certain extent as well. The downhill is quite technical, but this one I didn't want it to be too technical, so I wanted it to be a bit more of a sort of longer power track. And in it, I wanted to have a mix. So I've got basically two climbs where you could put in an attack and hopefully try and get a break on the hill. I purposely didn't make it too steep, given how crazy the Summit Islands track is. So I purposely picked the gradient to be 4% maximum. But yeah, there's a couple of fairly sustained climbs where you could get a gap, get a break, and then on top of that, I put in a couple of long straights where a crosswind could maybe play a part or make a difference. So it's another thing that could add a bit of spice to this track is a crosswind.
I'm excited to see how this one gets raced, because it is different to anything I've seen in the game. It goes up, it goes down, long sweeping lefts. There was one particular point that caught me where I was like, Ben, you've outdone yourself. And it's like this dip that goes down and you've got like this arch above it, and it just totally immerses you in it. Like, how do you come up with this?
Yeah, so it's a tunnel. So since I was started making this track, I was thinking, I'd love to have a mountain tunnel. But it was quite tricky. I couldn't get this sort of mountain object to look right, to be rotated right in terms of not having it ride through the scenery itself. And then I just thought, well, yeah, why don't I just tunnel underneath and then sort of make the top of the ground match it. And so I decided to do the tunnel. It was harder than it looks, but yeah, I added a tunnel. That was the last thing I added, in fact, because up to that point that was a flat section. So yeah, I just thought I'd dip it down, add a tunnel, and
it was the cherry on top. That was the one that made the whole thing come together for me. But I think here, the last question, Ben, which I think a lot of people really want to know. As a track creator, what is your favorite course? And you're more than allowed to say one of your own. What's your favorite track to race in the game or ride in the game?
It's quite a tough one. Personally, I quite like Fantastic Agency. And I think that's just because it's got this long sustained climb, and for me, I think that sort of 5-minute effort is where I do best generally. So I think it suits me in that sense. And I've had some races, not lately, but I've had some races where I was quite pleased with putting out a decent sort of 5-minute effort and getting a good gap.
How much does the graphics mean? How much do they matter to you?
I quite like having the nice graphics. I mean, I was happy to, I was there since the beginning, and I've seen them get better and better and better. But I don't know. I do understand people who maybe like to have the nice graphics over, sort of playability without the graphics. Maybe it's fickle. I don't know, but.
I meant more in terms of when you're racing the tracks, when you're racing Fantastic Alien Sea, when you're racing Dust Bowl Crit, do you look at the graphics around, or do you just look at the track? Like, do you get tunnel vision? That's where I think the graphics come into play.
It depends how hard I'm working, but I do tend to look at the graphics quite a lot. I sort of think, that's a nice sort of, translucency effect, or that's a nice water reflection, or...
Takes note. I will use this one.
I do look at them, actually. I look at the, the textures and things like that. So my eye does get drawn to it, as long as I'm not working too hard on the trainer and sort of suffering too hard.
Thank you, Ben.
Like to check it out and,
Pleasure having you on here as the first ever guest of the CVRcade Talk Show. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be sending you messages going, Ben, I've got an idea for the next track. I really want you to make this. And I'm sure Ben is all ears as long as keep it reasonable. So that's where the forum is. Thank you so much, Ben. I can't wait to ride and race on Metropolis or even commentate, because I think it's just going to evolve and evolve and evolve, and I hope that you continue to create tracks, because it is a godsend. Having new tracks in the game, just like spice up the racing, makes the commentary easier. I think just brings the joy to everybody. So from the entire community, Ben, thank you so much, and I will see you on CVRcade. So that was Ben Chuilon. Thank you very much for taking the time. If you out in the community have something you'd like to discuss with the rest of the community, get in touch with me on Facebook. I know a few of you already have, and I will most certainly reach out to those that I know for sure have a good story to tell. And we want to share that here because so much content gets created, so many races, so many streams, but getting lost down in the trenches are some of these like interesting, fascinating stories like Ben Chuilon. But guys, in there, he said his favorite track was Fantastic Alien Sea. Why do you think that is, Beth? Why not Cityscape New York? Why not Mountain Bike by Jesper? I'm not biased, but like, why not the realistic looking courses?
Well, I think Fantastic Alien Sea was one of those sort of first courses that really was kind of like mind expanding, and not because of the mushrooms, but I mean maybe because of the mushrooms, but I feel like we all of a sudden saw these like light and darkness and depth and texture, and I think that sort of from an artistic perspective, it just kind of opened everybody's mind, like, oh wait, we can go in these other dimensions, and the way that course kind of wraps and folds on yourself, it's easy to get lost if you don't know the course. But once you know the course, it's just fun because you know every turn and you anticipate, and it's just a fun course to race and ride on and an experience if you haven't been on it.
The mushrooms, though, I like every time CVRcade gets brought up in any Swift group, it's always the goddamn mushrooms. I'm like, that's what you care about? I mean, that is what you look at. Not the physics, not the realistic looking courses, not any of the physical equalization, but mushrooms. I mean, go, yeah, you do whatever you want to do. Vik, you've had experience just like Ben creating tracks. I remember many moons ago, we set out on a quest to create Sakalobra. Now, I don't think people quite know the amount of work that went into that, but try and elaborate.
Well, yeah, so that video is still up, I'm assuming, on YouTube. So if anyone want to go and watch it, just go on CVRcade's YouTube, because it's like, I think we spent like 2 hours on it, like something like that. And literally what we did, so Sakalobra, super famous climb, all like cyclists will know what it is. It's in Spain, whatever. But I've been there in real life, and I just realized with the track builder, because obviously you can create anything. So I just got this idea, we got this idea, like, let's recreate this epic climb. So we sat down and I printed out a map, and we just looked at a map and tried to go like, okay, slightly right, slightly left, oh, too right, too left. And it was so cool to see like the track and like this hill, like kind of you just saw it, like, I'm not sure how to describe it, but you could just make it like, oh, I've been here in real life and now I'm there in the game. And it was super cool. And I feel like, especially for someone like Ben, who's like, he's an engineer with like his work. So like seeing like creating something that's like what he does and like engineer stuff. And like, I got that experience back then, so I can't imagine what he feels like. So like Sakalobra, I really want to do something like that again. And I mean, I really want someone else to try and just recreate a climb, recreate something you've seen or done in a real life ride, and just do it, because it's a lot of fun. So yeah.
The real thing I want to see is Sakalobra in the racing rotation. If people think Summit Islands is not fun, go and race Sakalobra at 100% trainer difficulty.
That's a proper climb right there.
That is where we separate the good racers from those that can really suffer. But I really enjoyed making that climb. But like, the track builder is such a unique proposition. Like, I cannot believe no one else has ever thought about this. Like, Road Grand Tours didn't do it. Vertigo didn't do it. Swift would never do it. But CVRcade, like, it brings out the inner child. Like, I think, at least if you've had a proper childhood, all three of us have played with Legos at one point or another. I mean, even my granddad worked at Legos. And it brings back that sort of like feeling, like, if I put this block on top of this block until this block, suddenly I have a massive painting. And I really like that aspect. And the best thing is, like, you have free access to it. You can go in, you can make it, and I love watching it all unfold. But hearing him talk about, like, spending hours thinking about it, guys, this is just his third track. Like, he's built Dust Bowl Crit, Summit Islands, now Metropolis. Beth, where do you think this could take? Like, what is his 10th track? What would that be like?
Well, what I really enjoyed hearing him talk about is how it's not just how he's placing the artwork and how he's flipping things upside down and he's submerging them. I mean, he's really getting super creative with the tools that are there. So, and it's not just, you know, I marvel at just the symmetrical how things are equidistant in space and how when you move through the space you get that kind of road rush, right? So there's all these things that are happening in the design that I think that it kind of washes over you because it's correct, right? Like if something was off angle, you'd be like, ooh, that's weird. What's that? But it's so freaking perfect and so amazing with the tunnels and stuff and the way that you're like, I try to do it on my little oval and I have like dirt road and then grass and it's this hodgepodge mix. I'm like, I'm going to try this. And so like the amount of planning that he's already demonstrating, he makes it look easy. And when anyone's talented and stuff, they make it look easy. They go, oh, I could do that. And then you try and you're like, oh, no, I can't yet. But he takes so much practice and care. And he's thinking about the wind on the course. He's not just saying, oh, I'm going to keep my rises at 4% max because that's anything more than that is cruel and unusual, and I'm not that cruel, only occasionally. But like it's sort of the wind on course, what the crosswinds are going to be. It's just other level with him, and I think that he's setting a really high bar. But user created content is amazing, right? Like, and that's the part that's really cool about this game. It's sort of like CVRcade is going, here's some tools, guys. What are you going to do with it? Have a party, you know, and then these are getting into the race rotation. So it's just awesome. It's just awesome. I'm so impressed with what Ben's done. I'm so grateful for what he's done to really sort of open all of our minds to what's available to do in the game and also to inspire us to create our own stuff.
Gotta love it. A gamer as yourself, Vik, you've seen this before because for the fitness world, it's quite new to go, you know what? The consumer knows best. If we give them the tools, they'll trial and error. It's like if you give, this is going to be very mean, but if you give a monkey a key writer, whatever they're called, eventually they'll write out a Shakespeare play or whatever it is.
Oh, God.
They will. It's been proven.
No, I'm just going to pass on for that point. Forget you ever heard that. But Vik, as a gamer yourself, how do you feel about having all these tools? I mean, there's the track builder, there's all these things you can do within the game.
See, like, when Beth talked, I just realized, like, this is kind of like Minecraft, like the track builder. Like, you have this, like, blank space, this world, and you can create anything. And I feel like, especially for, like, the younger audience, I feel like having that tool is really, really cool and really unique. And I feel like, for me, it's just super cool, because going back to Sakalabra, it's like, you have something in your mind, but then you actually have like somewhat like the tools to create. Maybe it wasn't, you know, one-to-one perfect, but it was good enough for me to get satisfied. So I feel like, yeah, like just this like crossover, like this Minecraft to CVRcade. Now, I'm not sure if that's why we have like the blocks in our logo. I'm not sure. But I feel like you can just create anything, it's just great. Yeah.
On that note, everybody, I'll leave you on one last nugget. While Victor and I did some research on Ben's new course, we searched CVRcade writers for Metropolis. Now, back in April, a CCC team member that wasn't Ben released a course called Metropolis. Now, who came first with the idea? Was it Ben? Was it Nigel? I'll leave you with that thought. But thank you so much for listening or watching to this podcast once more. It's actually a lot of fun to sit down and talk about this because we don't really get a chance to do it. And if you've enjoyed it, make sure to either subscribe to wherever you're listening to it, Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, or YouTube. Give it a like. Give us some feedback over on the CVRcade Writers Forum. But until next time, we'll see you.